Will Riley might end up being the best player on this year's Illini squad, but it's okay if he starts the season coming off the bench. Let's talk about it.
You are Locked On Illini, your daily podcast on the Illinois Fighting Illini. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Illini. My name is Sunny Verma. You can find me at IlliniCast or at the Sunny V or on all your favorite social media platforms. Do a quick search for Locked On Illini. Thank you for making us your first listen every single day. And if you'd like to support the show, please just hit that like button or hit that subscribe button. It costs you guys nothing, but it helps us greatly. We have a fun episode for you today. We're going to be discussing Will Riley and his role on this team this upcoming season. And also, we're going to be bringing in Daniel House to give us insight on what the Minnesota Gophers football team may look like for Saturday's clash. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. So on Monday's episode of Locked On Illini, I went over what I felt I was very pleasantly surprised, and that was a positional review of the center position. And that was some of you agreed with me on my take on Ivicic, a guy who, in my opinion, was one of the most pleasant surprises from his game on Sunday. Some of you disagreed, but as always, I always appreciate your guys' feedback. Definitely let me know in the comments of every single episode the things that you agreed with me on and the things that you didn't agree with me on. Today, I kind of wanted to focus on the wing position. And in particular, I wanted to start off with Will Riley because I don't think it's exactly too big of a secret to say that he's probably the highest ceiling guy, arguably even on the team. And so it's his role that's going to have a microscope focused on it for the better part of the year. Quick background on Will Riley. Will Riley's from Canada. He was supposed to be in the 2025 class, and he was ranked, I believe, in the top 10 at some point. And then ultimately, once we hired Orlando Antigua, we initiated conversation with him. He visited multiple other schools and ultimately decided to reclass to 2024. And then he fell a little bit in the rankings, but I believe he was still top 20. And he decided to come to Champaign this fall and he was the bow tie recruiting class that Brad Underwood kind of put together last minute this past offseason. Will Riley comes with high expectations. A guy who, when I say in his prime, if he were to stay in college for 3 seasons, he would absolutely be a contender for leading the nation in scoring. Do I think he's going to stay 3 seasons? Of course not. But I'm just saying he's got that sort of talent. A guy who's not scared to shoot the ball. He believes in himself, and not in a cocky way, but in a confident way. And there certainly is a difference. I got to watch him. I got to focus on him on a replay when I watched Sunday's game. And his stats, let's be honest, weren't all that impressive. I'll go ahead and read that box score real quick. In 18 minutes, Will Riley went 2 for 8, 2 for 4 from three-point land, 2 rebounds, 2 turnovers, got 7 points altogether. Again, not the most impressive box score, but not to rehash, Ole Miss looks like they're going to be a very good basketball team, and they're a very experienced basketball team, and they're a very physically big basketball team. Will Riley, for that to be his first experience playing college basketball, I'm not too surprised that he may have started off not exactly in an ideal way. But what does that mean for the season in general? Will Riley in that first half notably really tried to play the college game the way he tried to play the high school game. 95% of the time, he was the best player on the court. So he knew with his length, he could basically, and his skill set, his offensive skill set, his bag is deep. The guy could do almost whatever he wanted and score on whoever was guarding him. And maybe some of that carried over to that game on Sunday. And what happened? He struggled a bit, in particular, in that first half. It was only in that second half when he kind of resorted to hey, let me find an open spot on the court. One of these guys is going to find me. And that's when all of a sudden in the second half, he improved a little bit and he was nailing his open shots. Bottom line is Will Riley is 6'8", I believe 180 pounds. He still has a little growing to do, at least when it comes to his strength. It's going to be very difficult for him to translate immediately what he did at the high school level to college. As I'm going to talk about in my bold takes episode, you guys are kind of going to be able to figure out what one of my bold takes is going to be. This is, I feel like, 2 seasons in one when it comes to Illini basketball this upcoming year. I do think we're going to struggle right off the bat. And Sunday was no fluke. I think this is a team that's going to take time to find itself defensively. I think this is a team that's going to take time finding itself offensively, even though there's an immense amount of offensive talent out there. And I think Will Riley is kind of the perfect example of that. I think at the beginning of the year, it makes sense for Will Riley to come off the bench, provide that scoring, provide that burst, that energy that he's able to provide, while he gets acclimated to the speed and power of the Big Ten. I legit think he could come off the bench for the first 10 games of the season and still average double-figure points as he builds his confidence. With my guess of early season struggles, I kind of prefer the idea of a Trey White in that starting lineup, like Brad Underwood did on Sunday, because while Trey White doesn't offer the high ceiling that a Will Riley does, I think he raises the floor of that starting lineup considerably. I think at the beginning of the year, Brad Underwood is going to have to play a little conservative and try to put his best lineup on that day on that court. And the reason being is if you get off to a rough start, if, again, these young guys take time to gel, a lot of these young guys have never played together before. If it takes a while for these young guys to gel and you take up a couple losses along the way, what you don't want is any sense of doubt or a hit to that self-confidence to come through. Because let's be honest, the out-of-conference schedule really isn't that important. It's the Big Ten schedule that's going to be really important. That's when you really want your squad to be well in tuned and confident and prepared to go into battle every single day. And if we're being really honest, while the Big Ten schedule matters, it's really March now here in Champaign that we really have our eyes set on. And that's when we want the Illini to be playing at their peak abilities. So if Will Riley comes off the bench against some of, the first 10, maybe dozen games while he gets acclimated to the college basketball scene, but then maybe in the first handful of Big Ten games, he's shown enough improvement, maybe both combined in practice and on the court, to overtake a guy like Trey White in that starting lineup. Again, I think that considerably raises the ceiling of this basketball team. Trey White is average to good at multiple facets of basketball. And I do think that we saw enough of what Kasparis is able to do in that starting lineup. I still have confidence in Ben Hummerkaus to be able to make the open jump shots that he just happened to miss on Sunday. And I do think Ben is going to be one of the better three-point shooters that we've had in a while, and ultimately a double-digit scorer. Same with the Visic. Sure, he needs to improve his defense, which everyone likes to point out, but I think his physical presence and his soft touch on offense is going to be another guy who could average double figures in the paint and a potential all Big Ten type of player. So I don't know if we necessarily need what Will Riley does oh so well in that starting lineup right off the bat, mainly because a guy that young is going to play erratic. A guy that young is still figuring things out. And so for me, I almost prefer him figuring these things out in the games that, while they may matter to us as fans, of course, we want to go in and beat Alabama and just go through our out-of-conference schedule undefeated. It's all about the Big Ten season. And what is going to make Illinois the best basketball team in March may not mean what's going to make Illinois the best basketball team in November. We need to get Will Riley right, because if Will Riley plays to his capabilities, he could very well be the best player on this Illinois basketball team. And maybe 10 games is too much on the bench. Maybe Will Riley figures it out in 3 weeks when we play Alabama. So be it. That's ultimately my point. I don't want to rush the kid. The kid is a future star in this league. And he's a future star in the NBA level, potentially. He's showing up in these mock drafts in the lottery level. So he's a guy who we have to make sure we do right by, because the eyes are going to be on Will Riley. The eyes are going to be on Kasparas Jakušonis. We need to make sure we develop these two basketball players to be able to jump to the next level, because the recruiting classes that follow, the top 20 prospects in 2025, in 2026, they're going to see if that we follow through on our promise of development and say, hey, you come to Illinois, you're going to be on a very good basketball team, you're going to contend for championships, and oh, by the way, in the whole process, we'll also get you ready for the NBA. I would not be shocked if Will Riley ultimately ends up being even a higher draft pick than Kasparas. And you're talking to a guy who thinks Kasparas might have the highest ceiling of any Illini player that he's watched in a very, very long time. Will Riley's just that good of a scorer. But with that comes Brad Underwood's responsibility to make sure that he puts the best product on the floor. Now, what happens if Will Riley is not happy with that role off the bench and he sulks and ultimately he decides to transfer out after the year? Well, what we've learned from the team 2 seasons ago is that Brad needs to not necessarily just always cater to personalities. He tried doing that. He tried doing that with Adam Miller, who started every single game. He tried doing that with Jaden Epps. Brad Underwood has one obligation and one responsibility, and that's to the Illinois basketball program. If he deems that Will Riley's not ready to start yet, and Will Riley disagrees, and Will Riley decides to move on after this year, you know what? Between Brad Underwood and Orlando Antigua, having another open scholarship isn't exactly the worst idea in the world. Of course, I don't want it to happen because, as I've said before, if Kasparas is a one and done this year and Will Riley plays maybe slightly more limited minutes, but enough so that he decides to come back for his sophomore season, I think he has potential all Big Ten next year. So, of course, ultimately, I want him to stay in an Illini uniform. But as a fan, as an analyst, as a guy who covers the basketball team, I want the Illinois basketball team overall at its best. And that's bigger than any individual player. So my opinion now is I completely understand Will Riley coming off the bench. And while I don't think it is going to be permanent, and I don't think it's going to last more than 10 games, it may only be a couple of games. And early on in the season, if we're starting Trey White, on a basketball sense-wise, it ultimately makes sense because the games don't matter in November. The games hardly matter in December. It's Big Ten season, and more importantly, March, when things really, really matter. And that's when we want Will Riley playing at his absolute best. The NBA season is well underway, and it was just yesterday I got to watch Luka Doncic against Minnesota Timberwolves make another heartbreaking three-pointer with time running down. It kind of reminded me of last season, and the NBA is absolutely back here in Texas. Austin in particular, I don't have an NBA team close to me, but doesn't mean that I don't plan on seeing my Chicago Bulls once they visit San Antonio or up in Dallas just a couple hours away. I'll definitely plan on going, and when I do, I'll be getting tickets using the Game Time app. Game Time filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. It has all-in pricing. Toggling this feature shows the total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout, and seat views. Get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. Also, Game Time comes with the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account. Locked On College for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Okay, so Saturday, Illinois against Minnesota, a game where Illinois started off as favorites. They opened up as 2.5-point favorites, but as of last night, it was Minnesota that's now the favorite in that game in Champaign. I believe it was -3 last night before I went to go to bed too. Tell us a little bit more about the Minnesota Gophers. I'm bringing on friend of the show, Daniel House from GophersGuru.com. Daniel, thank you for stopping by.
Hey, good to see you, man. I always know it's Minnesota versus Illini when you're hitting the DMs to do something together. It's always fun.
Yeah, no, and again, if you want to keep up with Gophers athletics, I really appreciate Daniel's work. So definitely go check out his website, which I'll include in the description of this episode. Daniel, let's just start off. The season didn't start out ideal for the Gophers. They stumbled a little bit, but they've really turned things around, obviously winning the last 3 games and in pretty impressive fashion. This is a team that looks like it's going to be coming in pretty confident. What happened in between from the beginning of the season, where they struggled a little bit to now where they're one of the hottest teams in the conference?
It was a journey through the first 7 games, up and down, inconsistent. Couldn't put together really a full 60-minute game. There were flashes throughout early in the year, but then you get like a holding penalty on defense, a pre-snap offensive penalty that backs you up and gets you off schedule. So they were able to really clean up a lot of those little detail lapses that had hurt them earlier in the year. And that has just been huge. They've been really good on first and second down. So they've been in favorable down and distance situations. Third down, they've been able to really convert there and do a good job when they get there because they're in shorter yardage situations. Defensively, it's just been, brand new defensive scheme. A lot of the similar elements with Corey Heatherman taking over for Joe Rossi. They're more multiple defensively just in terms of what they do stylistically. They got dime package in their defense now, so they're able to do some things, tying rush and coverage together. I feel the ability to do that over the course of the last few games has been really key. The coverage being able to hold up with their zone drops, and then the pass rush being able to pin the pocket and just feeding off of each other, which I think is a sign of a defense that's starting to come into its own.
So let's kind of give a glimpse to, this is an Illini-focused show, obviously. So we may not exactly be familiar with the Minnesota roster. I'm going to provide you the floor to give us, I guess you can say, a scouting report. We'll start on offense, and we'll start with Max Brosmer, a guy who got a lot of hype over the offseason. And for me, when I make my prediction show, I think I'm going to make it on Thursday's episode. I'm going to talk about how I think this game's going to come down between the 2 quarterbacks and which one has a better game. Tell us a little bit about Brosmer and what kind of player he is.
And very accurate. His intelligence is something that the coaches have talked a lot about. His ability to get to the line of scrimmage, have 2 different plays ready based on the coverage structure. He's able to check into what they want to do, making adjustments. Being able to really see the field well. That's the strength of him, being able to manipulate defenders, go through the whole progression, get to the back. Minnesota has really incorporated the backs into the passing game more through screens and route designs. You look at their route snap usage, it's up significantly. Screen pass usage is up. It's been really helpful for them to be able to force defenses to have to defend every inch of the field horizontally and vertically. That's been one of the big takeaways, and Brosmer's really given them the ability to do that. He's, had an 84.8% adjusted completion percentage last week, 4 touchdowns, 320 yards, being able to make throws at all 3 levels of the field. He is very good in the red zone. That's something that you saw at New Hampshire, ability to use his eyes to move defenders, understand where leverage is, and place the ball with good accuracy. So I think when you get down in the red zone, that's something to watch with Brosmer. But being able to just settle in early in the year, I thought it was, just getting used to, like, the North Carolina scheme was really difficult the first game. Lots of blitzing, lots of exotic looks. And for that to be the first game that he played in primetime on a big stage, just trying to get used to, throw shape into windows, the trajectory of balls, where it has to go. I felt like he started to get that as the season's gone on. It's settled in. I mean, the scheme really has fit his strengths super well, and they've been able to maximize their playmakers in creative ways schematically.
And you also have guys who all of the Big Ten know all about, wide receiver Daniel Jackson and your running back Darius Taylor. Tell us a little bit about them.
Daniel Jackson had just an outstanding game last week. And I mean, I think people are pretty accustomed to the hands that he has, the big time catches he makes, the Michigan game being able to bring that one in the end zone where he doesn't even have a line of sight on the ball. I mean, he's turning, able to maintain body control and bring the ball in. He's had those grabs throughout his career at Minnesota, just outstanding hands. His details have gotten even better, I think, from a route running standpoint, short area quickness. Those short area route types, that's something I think he's been putting a lot of emphasis on. Last week, you saw how Minnesota was really able to move him around, use him in different ways, return motion into the flat, motion him into the slot, put him out wide, like all these different things that Minnesota is able to do formationally and through motion usage to get Daniel Jackson really good matchups and make it harder for the defense to identify where he is on the field. That's something that they've done a very good job of this year. His route running was really crisp last week, all different route types. And it's just been fun to watch his growth. I believe he's really taken a huge step forward and definitely going to get a lot of NFL draft buzz now this season after a lot of the improvements that he's made. And Darius Taylor out of the backfield. Minnesota, I'd say, they've kind of altered their approach a little bit. People kind of think Minnesota, ground and pound, just, line up, let's play. This year, it's been more of using the quick game and the screen game as an extension of the rushing attack. Darius Taylor leads the Big Ten running backs in receiving targets. And so he's been able to do a lot with checkdowns, being able to get, 4 or 5 yards on first, second down, get yourself in a more favorable down and distance situation. So Darius' skills in that area have been notable. And he's always been that guy that can make the first defender miss in the zone scheme. So you got to be able to wrap up and tackle, swarm to the ball. And that's going to be important for Illinois' defense. They've had him and Marcus Major kind of as a 1-2 punch. Major's more of that one cut downhill runner that fits the zone scheme as well and be able to kind of get tough out yardage that maybe isn't available. So I think they've done a good job of featuring their playmakers and their best players and spreading the football around. They got a lot of people involved this season over the course of games.
Yeah, it's funny to think about where you have a Brett Bielema against PJ Fleck showdown, and it's going to be about the passing and not usually just the, trenches running that both of these coaches are kind of accustomed to. Let's switch it up to the defensive side. What are some of the names that Illini fans should be looking out for?
Yeah, Ja Joyner, number 17, pass rusher, long, twitchy pass rusher who really is disruptive. Last week, was able to get around the corner, alter the quarterback, get his hands up into passing lanes. Very, very good pass rusher who is continuing to add more moves to his arsenal. Someone that Illinois is going to have to keep a very close eye on from a protection standpoint, being able to potentially chip him a little bit, provide attention there. In the secondary, it's been impressive how Minnesota's secondary has come together. I've been very surprised by how seamless it was in terms of just everyone communicating and playing in sync. Justin Wally's a veteran that people are pretty familiar with, been around the program for a while. He's actually been playing hurt, doing a really good job. Tight zone drops, being able to make plays on the ball. He's looked really good this season, complemented by Ethan Robinson, who's a transfer from Bucknell. Physical corner, able to make a lot of plays, click and close on the ball. Physical. Minnesota's done a really good job tackling on the perimeter, handling screen passes, those type of things. They've played a lot of zone, being able to mix what they do with the zone, like people's roles change. So, for example, against USC, they're playing a lot of Tampa 2, cover 2 invert type of stuff where they got the corners drop into the deep half, role replacing. You got middle hole defender in the middle that can kind of keep his eyes on the middle of the field and, screen passes. And I thought that was a really good scheme. And then the underneath flat defenders replacing the corners that are dropping into the deep half. So they've done a lot of role replacing with their zone coverage schemes. So it's forced the quarterback to have to really sit back there, process the ball, process the coverage, and not get rid of the ball as fast. And so the pass rush has benefited from that. So that's why I said earlier, pass rush and coverage tying together has been really key for Minnesota. And then I'd say at linebacker, Cody Lindenberg, someone who is a instinctive, rangy linebacker, who's really been finding his stride as the season's gone on here, gaining comfort in what Minnesota is doing defensively coming back from injury. So those are a few players I would spotlight. And then Coy Parrish, he's a 4-star freshman from Esco, Minnesota, able to fend off Ohio State late for him. He's been just unbelievable in the back end of the defense, just playing at a high level, coming in June. I mean, that's what I think is really impressive about it. He's a June guy, not coming in here as an early enrollee, being able to come in and make plays. Couple interceptions in recent games. It's been fun to watch kind of how Minnesota's defense has evolved and made plays.
So I said at the beginning of the segment, Minnesota is actually now a 3-point favorite in this game in Champaign. Illinois currently is undefeated at home. So if Minnesota ultimately wins this game, Daniel, what kind of game script do you foresee happening for the Gophers to come out on top?
Yeah, I think this is a game where Minnesota might run the ball a little bit more. Digging into Illinois, I feel like, run defense-wise, you look at all the efficiency metrics, 5th worst rush defense success rate in college football right now. I think some perimeter run game stuff might be able to work, do some stuff to be able to get angles in the run game, some like crack tosses, zone insert stuff to be able to create extra gaps and get the run game rolling. This might be a game where they mix it up a little bit more and try to run the football. I also see on the other side of the ball, I think it's really going to be about Minnesota's secondary versus Illinois' passing attack. I've been really impressed with just the whole mix of what Illinois is doing conceptually on offense. Barry Lenny being able to, vary formation usage, do a good job marrying up run and pass. Altmaier's been comfortable, looks confident, not making those like catastrophic mistakes that he's made in the past where it's like just throw the ball away, take the sack, eat it. Don't do that. I feel like that's been better. I want to see if Pat Bryant is available, whether he plays or not. Him and Franklin have been a nice combination together. I feel like Illinois is starting to show some cohesion up front, starting to get closer. I feel like they're getting ready to click, running the ball a little bit better. I'm going to be watching that. Can Minnesota defend the run at a high level? And then I'd say lastly, it's containing Luke Altmaier's legs. I look at games where Minnesota has played Illinois in the past. Altmaier's been able to, it's 3rd and 9, and he's able to slip out and get 10 yards and move the sticks and keep a drive alive. They've been able to sustain drives against Minnesota, kind of shorten the game up. So is Minnesota able to compress the pocket, pin Altmaier in there, maybe get a mistake or two? Turnovers will be a huge factor in this game. The team that gets more turnovers is probably going to end up leaving with a victory.
And I mean, that might have answered this question. If Illinois wins this game, what did Illinois do well?
Yeah, I'd say if Illinois is winning this game, they're gonna run the football well. I have a feeling, if I was to guess, Brett Bielema is maybe going to run the football hard in this game, try to really set the tone, shorten the game up, shorten the possessions, maybe come out with a little bit of heavy OL pass, create some extra gaps and try to do some things in the run game that are creative. I think eye discipline manipulation is going to be really important. Can you introduce some concepts and then make a subtle wrinkle off of it to create big plays? I know that's got Minnesota in the past while playing Illinois. It's just like, one year was like mesh rail and being able to hit the wheeling back out of the backfield. They'd shown some stuff early in the game and then built off of it. So I'm going to be watching what Lunny does from a overall schematic perspective. Eye discipline is something I think Minnesota's defense is going to have to be ready for, because I really like what Illinois does from a run game perspective. You got gap scheme, you got tight zone, you got wide zone, nice mix, and they do a good job of pairing up their passing concepts with it. Then lastly, I would say, it's defensively, this scheme is just it's different. It's something that coaches talk a lot about. When I talk to coaches, they're always like Purdue and Illinois schemes. Off that Ryan Walters tree, it's something different. You got that 5-man front, that bear tight front type of defense, and then you got all the man coverage. But also people kind of label it as a man coverage defense, cover one man free, but they're able to really change presentations. They're able to bluff out into cover 2, Tampa 2, show a look, alter a defensive player's zone drop at the last second, make it look like it might be cover 1, but it's really cover 3, and you got a player dropping. That's what I want to see. How does Minnesota handle that? Is there a mistake that's created because of Illinois' ability to do things with coverage? So those are a few factors. Are they able to get a turnover? We mentioned that in the Minnesota portion, just being able to come away with a takeaway or two. That could be the difference between winning and losing this game. So those are just a few areas I'm watching.
Yeah, I don't care what Ohio State and Penn State fans say. I think this is the game of the weekend. Two really evenly matched teams. Does Brett Bielema continue his streak against the Gophers and make it to 11-0? We shall see. Daniel, before I let you go, can you let the folks know again where they can find your content?
You can find my content at gophersguru.com. $5 a month gets you access to the premium content. And then on social media, you can find me on Twitter at Daniel House. And then lots of stuff previewing the matchup and recapping last week's game.
Appreciate you, Daniel.
Thanks so much.
Special thank you to Daniel for stopping by and giving us a glimpse of what we could expect against the Minnesota Gophers on Saturday. On Thursday's episode, I'll probably be making my official prediction. I'm still going back and forth a little bit, but I think I have an idea of which direction I'm going to go in. Make sure you don't miss that episode, and you won't if you hit that notification bell right up there. You'll know exactly when we go live. You'll know exactly when these episodes are airing. And again, take a look on your bottom right corner and make sure you're subscribed to the channel. 57% of you this morning, as of this morning, who watch this show are not subscribed. Now, I get it. It may not affect you all that much, but it's a simple way for you to help support me and the growth of this channel, because the more likes it gets, the more subscriptions it gets. It basically shows up in the algorithms of other Illini fans, and it helps this community grow. And growing is exactly what this community is doing. It's one of the fastest growing that we have on the entire network. And trust me when I say that in the conversations I've had with the higher-ups, they're very impressed with the passion of Illini fans. To wrap up today's episode, I just wanted to mention a couple things. Jacob Furphy ultimately decided to commit to the UConn Huskies. He was a top 15 player who I had a little preview about a couple weeks ago. I'm not too surprised. I've talked about this before. When it comes to going up against UConn, I think it's just a completely different beast. They're back-to-back champions. They have the best coach in the country, and almost their entire starting lineup got drafted to the NBA in last year's NBA draft. So it's hard to argue with going up against that program and losing. I'd argue it's tougher to go up against them than even the blue bloods like North Carolina, Duke, or Kansas. But all is not bad in the world of Illini recruiting. Spencer Aarons, who, again, I also did a preview episode of a couple weeks ago, he has Illinois in his final 6, and we'll see if he'll be making a decision relatively shortly. On the NBA front, 3 Illini players are going to be playing in the minor leagues for NBA teams. Marcus Damask with the Windy City Bulls, Quincy Guerrier with the Raptors, and Justin Harmon with, I believe, the Utah Jazz's affiliate. I forget what they are called. So it's nice to see Illini talent showing up at the professional level, maybe not quite at the NBA level that we had hoped. And Terrence Shannon has gotten off to a pretty slow start, but not to his own fault. He just hasn't been playing all that much for the Minnesota Timberwolves, but he's still a guy that I think is going to have a long NBA career. And again, it's just good for the Illinois program. The more guys that we're able to recruit here, develop here, and send off to the pros so that they can have a successful professional career playing basketball. That's going to just about wrap it up for today's episode. Again, I appreciate all of your support. On Thursday, I'm going to be talking about what I think is going to be the most important matchup in the game on Saturday against the Minnesota Gophers. I'm contemplating a watch party. Let me know if you'd be interested in watching the game collectively together. I can set up a link and we can watch the game together if you're interested. It's an 11 a.m. kickoff, so some of you might have plans, but if you don't, let me know in the chat and I can set something up. But otherwise, I'll see you the rest of the week. We're going to have more basketball content, and of course, we're going to have more football content every day. That's my promise to you. So until then, ILL, love you guys.